welcome to Arthur Cottage. This is the cottage where the Arthur family lived before they went off to America about 1814, 16 time. We're not sure of the exact date as the passenger lists are missing, but the Arthur family lived here. Alan Arthur was the father and William was the wee boy. Now William was very clever and he was actually sent to be educated at Inston, Belfast. We wonder how they could afford to have done that, but he may have had relations in Belfast or something like that. And that may have been one of the reasons why the Arthurs decided to immigrate, because he was clever and he would have more opportunities in America. As well as that, at that particular time, the farmers had no prospect, or at least they thought they had no prospect of ever owning their own farm, and if they tried to improve their farm or build a bit on, up went the rent, and that was a problem too, and there was quite a bit of unsettlement around here about that time. The farmers eventually came to own their own land later on at the end of that century, but anyhow, that may have been one of the reasons why the Arthurs went. As well as that, I know there was a potato famine in the 1840s, but there was a bad potato crop around that time as well. So I think all these things may have culminated in the Arthur family deciding to go off. We've tried to keep the cottage as near as possible to what it would have been like when the Arthurs lived, or even after that period, and we've quite a lot of artefacts here which we point out. There would have been a loom in the room of the cottage where Alan Arthur would have worked and produced linen cloth which he would have sold, and as well as that, with the produce of the farm as well, they were comfortably off. William would have helped too with the churning. We have a plunge churn here before he went to school, probably in the morning. We're not sure now where he went to primary school, because any of the schools that are around about are really not old enough for him to have gone to school there. He may have gone to what we call a hedge school or something to that effect. But the thing is, he was clever. And another thing, while he was young, I was out in the farm and a wall fell on him, and he forever after that walked with a limp. So that might have been another reason for the emigration, that he maybe never would have been fit enough to farm. But we also show people the loft where the family would have slept. We are not sure how many brothers and sisters William had, because the records haven't shown that, but the family would have slept, the children would have slept up in the loft in a mattress made of chaff, and there's a settle bed beside the fire which folds out onto a bed where some of them would have slept at night. And the cottage at one time did have an upper room which was demolished. Now the cottage itself was last lived in possibly about the 1950s, because after the Arthurs left, the family called Gurley owned the farm, or rather occupied the farm, and then after that the cottage was actually divided into two houses, which were brought back into one later on, and we do have a list of people who lived in the cottage since the Arthurs left. We have lots of other artefacts which we point out, like the candle, the candles which were made from rushes stripped and dipped in fat to make the candles. We have the oven pot where the mother of the house would have cooked cake inside the pot. There's the crane and the links which held the kettle and the griddle. Other things we have would be the underwear, or the dress, the nighties and the underwear that they would have worn in those times, which we show, and some close work that was done as well by the people then. There's a sampler on the wall which was worked by a lady who brought it here many years ago. she told us she was actually a cousin to the Arthurs. I'm not sure now which Arthurs, a long time ago, but she donated the sampler to the cottage, and it's very old. I would say it's very valuable. Samplers were created in those days when the children were wanted something to do rather than work at their computers or their iPads. But as well as that, we tell people who come, especially the schools, cannot believe that at one time there was no bathroom, no toilet, no shower, nothing like that. At that time we tell them about the big bath in front of the fire where the children were all bathed in the bath, and they say, in the same water, and we say, oh yes, of course. They can't understand that at one time that's actually the way life was. And as well as that, we have the dresser, as the poem goes, full of shining delf speckled in white and blue and brown, and the roof is made of scraws, as we call it. Scraws or scras, which are sods which are cut from the ground and then put in the roof, and then the thatch put on top of that. And we also have a replica of a spinning wheel, and the peats, of course, are the turf which was used to burn in the fire. Nearly every family in the country area would have owned a part of the bog where they went and cut their turf and carted it home to the fire, and that was another job for the father of the house to do, as well as working in his loom. And the children would have been busy then too. Young William would have had to help to wind the bobbins and whatnot for the loom, and they would have, prior to the weaving, of course, they would have grown the flax first. They always had a field or two of flax or lint which was pulled. We actually, some years ago, we recreated a flax pulling. We sowed our upper garden in flax, and when it came into bloom we had a flax pulling, and we gave a prize to the person who made the best rush band, which was used to tie around the flax, and that was good fun. At that time it recreated what life was like not very many years ago, for it's not that long since that did take place in the countryside. Pictures of the President himself, and pictures that were donated by relations to the Arthurs. And I should have mentioned that when the Arthurs did go in 1814-16 time, the passenger lists, as I said, are missing. There was a fire at the port of Quebec where we think they arrived. That was in Canada, and then they travelled on to America. But as I say, the passenger lists are missing, and it's a bit of a sore point too, because there's so much we don't know. At one time in 1882 we were told that President Arthur's sister came home here and brought young Testran Arthur with her, but we have searched the local papers and can find no report of that. But I'm sure it did happen, and maybe sometime we'll be able to find that out. As far as the church where the Arthur family went to, we're not sure of that either. Some of the old records that were carried out by the National Trust people who owned the cottage before the council bought it. Again, the National Trust records went up in a fire, so they can't tell us any details that we'd like to know. But they said that the Arthur family went to the Secession branch of the Presbyterian Church, the nearest one being Killymurris, which is quite a distance away. But my personal opinion is that they were Covenanters, because when Mary Arthur came home here to visit with her wee boy, Testran Arthur, with her wee boy, Testran Arthur II, that was, the family stayed with the Mrs. Evans on the main street, and they were Covenanter families. So we think they may have been Covenanters, and that the Covenanter church was there at the time in Cullybecky at the time when the Arthurs lived here, so that may have been, but there's so much we just don't know, which will maybe develop over the years. We'll maybe find out more, in this modern age with access to the internet and everything. We might